In Hollywood, love is often staged, a red carpet performance of glittering smiles, diamond rings, and contracts signed behind closed doors. Marriages are televised, divorces are publicized, and the word forever tends to have an expiration date. But what if one of the greatest love stories in film history didn't begin with a proposal at all? What if it was built, quietly, over decades, with no vows, no wedding, no ceremony, only trust? Goldie Hawn's story begins not with scandal or heartbreak, but with defiance. To the world, she has always been sunshine personified, the bubbly blonde who made millions laugh through the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, a face of Hollywood optimism. From her days on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In to her Oscar-winning role in Cactus Flower and her unforgettable performances in Private Benjamin and Overboard, she became America's golden girl, charming, witty, and impossible not to love. But behind the bright smile was a woman who quietly questioned everything the industry told her about love, marriage, and what it meant to belong to someone. At the heart of her story lies one man, Kurt Russell. For more than 40 years, he's been her partner, her confidant, her equal in every sense. They raised children together, built a home, and faced the relentless attention of fame. And yet, through all of it, they never married. To some, it was a mystery. To others, a rebellion. But to Goldie, it was simply the most honest way to love. Their relationship defied every Hollywood rule. While other celebrity couples rushed toward glittering weddings and magazine spreads, Goldie and Kurt chose silence over spectacle. They never made grand declarations or sold their story to tabloids. They didn't need to. What they built together spoke louder than any ring ever could. Their love endured through decades of changing trends and personal reinvention, long after many of their peers had drifted apart. And here lies the secret, the truth that makes their story extraordinary. Goldie Hawn's romance wasn't hidden because it was forbidden. It was hidden because it was real. It was about waking up each morning and choosing each other, freely, without obligation. It was about laughter, independence, and an unspoken understanding that love doesn't have to be owned to be everlasting. When people asked why she never married Kurt Russell, Goldie's answer was simple yet profound: marriage is fine for people who need it. But we've both been there before. What we have doesn't need a piece of paper. In that quiet statement lies the entire philosophy of their relationship. A belief that freedom and love can coexist, that devotion doesn't need validation from a ceremony. Their story isn't about rebellion for its own sake. It's about two people who understood that happiness comes not from conforming to expectation, but from staying true to what works for them. While Hollywood chased the illusion of the perfect couple, Goldie and Kurt built something imperfectly perfect, a partnership that still glows, 40 years later, with the same warmth it began with. So tonight, as we pull back the curtain on one of the most enduring love stories in Hollywood history, we'll uncover not a scandal or a secret affair, but something far rarer, a love born out of choice, strengthened by time, and untouched by the need for approval. Here's how it all began, why it worked, and the truths Hollywood never wrote about. It was 1966, and the Disney backlot in Burbank buzzed with its usual energy. The clatter of set builders, the chatter of costumers, the scent of hairspray and hot lights. For the film The One and Only, genuine, original family band, a young Goldie Hawn, then just 21, had been cast as one of the cheerful singers in a musical that promised wholesome family charm. She was radiant, her blonde hair catching the studio lights, her laughter as bright as her future. Across the soundstage, a teenage boy, only 16, walked through the set, confident yet humble, one of Disney's young stars in training. His name was Kurt Russell. At that time, Goldie was already on the edge of something big. She was a dancer turned actress, balancing between ballet rehearsals and auditions, still discovering who she was in an industry that demanded smiles before stability. Kurt, on the other hand, was Hollywood's golden boy in the making, a child actor whose career had started early and who carried himself with quiet professionalism beyond his years. He was the kind of kid who knew his lines, hit his marks, and treated everyone with respect. When they met, it was brief. A polite introduction. A friendly exchange. There was no spark, no flirtation, no music swelling behind them. Just two lives brushing against each other in the middle of a busy set. Years later, Goldie would recall that first meeting with a fond laugh, saying she thought he was adorable but much too young. She was in her 20s, independent, ambitious, and focused on her craft. He was still a teenager, more interested in baseball than romance. Whatever connection they might have shared was tucked away under layers of time and timing. And yet, something about that encounter lingered, not in the way that lovers remember their first glance, but like a page left unturned in a book destined to be finished decades later. Hollywood, after all, has its own sense of timing. Sometimes, two stars orbit each other for years before gravity finally pulls them into the same sky. After that project, Goldie's career took off like a rocket. Within just a few years, she became a household name thanks to her comedic brilliance on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In and her Academy Award-winning performance in Cactus Flower. Her infectious personality and natural warmth made her one of the most beloved actresses in America. Kurt, meanwhile, continued to carve out a steady path through television and film, becoming one of Disney's most reliable young actors before transitioning into more mature roles in the 1970s. Their paths diverged, but never disappeared from each other's orbit. Goldie entered and exited marriages, raised children, and became a symbol of modern womanhood, free-spirited yet deeply grounded. Kurt grew into a charismatic leading man, known for his mix of rugged charm and boyish sincerity. Both found success. Both found heartbreak. Both learned, in their own ways, what love wasn't. And somewhere in the background, that first meeting on a cheerful Disney set remained, a small, almost forgotten moment waiting for its second act. Neither of them could have known that this innocent exchange, this fleeting introduction between a 21-year-old dancer and a 16-year-old actor, would one day mark the beginning of one of Hollywood's most unshakable love stories. Years later, when they crossed paths again, they would laugh about that moment. How fate had introduced them too soon. "We just weren't ready," Goldie admitted in an interview. And maybe that was the secret all along. Some loves aren't born in fireworks. They wait in the quiet corners of time until both hearts are ready. That day on the family band set didn't end with romance, but it planted something invisible, a connection that would sleep for nearly 2 decades. When it finally woke, it would change both their lives forever. 17 years had passed since that brief, forgettable encounter on the Disney lot. The world had changed, so had they. It was 1983, and both Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell had already lived entire lives in the time between their first meeting and this second chance. Fame had shaped them, success had refined them, and heartbreak had humbled them. They were no longer the bright-eyed kids from the one and only, genuine, original family band. They were grown, complex, and wiser about what love really meant. When they met again, it was on the set of Swing Shift, a romantic drama set during World War II. Goldie, now one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, was cast as Kay Walsh, a woman whose world is turned upside down by war and unexpected love. Kurt had been chosen to play her on-screen love interest, a charming airman named Lucky. It was almost poetic. Two people who had once met in innocence now playing characters discovering love in chaos. Their reunion wasn't orchestrated by fate's elegance but by a casting decision. Yet, from the moment they saw each other again, something clicked, a familiar spark that neither of them expected. Kurt later admitted he was hungover during their first screen test together, but even in that state, he couldn't help blurting out what became one of Hollywood's most unexpectedly iconic pickup lines. "Man, you've got a great figure." It wasn't suave. It wasn't rehearsed. But it was honest, and Goldie, instead of being offended, laughed. That laugh, the one the world knew so well, broke the tension and melted any awkwardness between them. She would later say that despite the clumsy line, she found him completely charming. It was kind of sweet, she remembered, because it was just so real. From that moment, the energy between them changed. The chemistry that had been missing all those years ago suddenly came alive, not in the exaggerated, scripted way of Hollywood romances, but in the quiet, easy way that feels like coming home. They began to talk, not just about the film, but about life, family, and what they'd learned about love. Both had been through enough to know the difference between passion and partnership. Goldie had already experienced the turbulence of fame and marriage. She had been married twice, first to dancer Gus Triconis, then to musician Bill Hudson, with whom she had 2 children, Oliver and Kate. She had learned that marriage didn't guarantee happiness, that love couldn't survive without space and respect. Kurt had also been married before, to actress Susan Hubley, and had a young son, Boston. Like Goldie, he carried the quiet weight of lessons learned, the kind of understanding that only comes from loss. So when they found each other again, it wasn't the excitement of youth that drew them together, it was recognition. Two souls who had already lived through the illusions of perfect love and now longed for something genuine. They weren't looking for fairy tales anymore. They were ready for something real. Their connection deepened quickly. They spent long hours together off-set, talking about everything from raising kids to balancing work and home life. There was an ease between them, a shared humor, a sense of mutual respect that came naturally. When the cameras stopped rolling, they didn't go their separate ways. They stayed close, slowly building the foundation of something that would outlast the film itself. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It wasn't a headline-making romance. It was quiet, steady, and deeply human. The kind of bond that doesn't announce itself, it simply grows. By the time swing shift wrapped, everyone on set could see it. Goldie and Kurt were inseparable. This was the moment their story truly began, not in youthful infatuation, but in the calm certainty of two people who had finally found their match. The secret wasn't that they were together. It was that they had chosen each other not for the world's approval, but for themselves. It was the start of a partnership that would defy time, fame, and the very idea that love has to follow rules. What began with a hungover compliment and a laugh would quietly turn into one of the most enduring romances in Hollywood history. One built not on promises, but on presence. For more than 4 decades, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell have shared one of Hollywood's rarest love stories. A bond that has outlasted countless celebrity marriages, scandals, and reinventions. Yet what continues to captivate fans and mystify the tabloids is that they never married. No rings, no wedding vows, no lavish ceremony. Just two people who chose to stay together every single day, without needing a piece of paper to prove it. In a world where Hollywood romances often come wrapped in diamonds and contracts, their decision was revolutionary. Since 1983, Goldie and Kurt have built a life, raised children, blended families, traveled the world, made films together, and watched each other age gracefully, all without ever saying "I do." For many, that was unthinkable. But for them, it was natural. Their relationship became an open declaration that love doesn't need the validation of a legal document to be real. People close to them often wondered why they never took the traditional step. Over the years, both have been asked the question repeatedly, on talk shows, in interviews, even by friends. Goldie always answers with the same serene certainty, it's not about the marriage. It's about the people and the relationship, and the will to stay together. That line, delivered in her signature calm warmth, sums up their entire philosophy. Goldie had seen enough to know that marriage didn't guarantee happiness, and that the end of one could be far more destructive than people admitted. Having been divorced twice, she understood how the institution of marriage could change the dynamic of love itself. A marriage ends up being a business deal, she once reflected, and sometimes when you put that in writing, people start thinking of it differently. Instead, she and Kurt built their relationship on freedom. The idea that choosing each other every morning was far more meaningful than being bound by law. If you like your independence, if you have enough money and enough sense of independence, there's something psychological about not being married, Goldie told in style. It gives you the freedom to make decisions one way or the other. For them, that freedom was the foundation of trust. Their commitment wasn't enforced, it was renewed. Every day was a quiet reaffirmation of their love, made not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire to be together. And somehow, that choice made their bond even stronger. Kurt shared the sentiment in his own way. When asked about marriage, he once said, "For people like us, the marriage certificate wasn't going to create anything that otherwise we wouldn't have." It wasn't rebellion, and it wasn't fear, it was simply an understanding that love could exist beautifully outside of convention. Their decision stood in direct contrast to Hollywood's expectations. For decades, tabloids speculated about secret engagements, wedding dates, or rumored breakups. Each time, the couple smiled and carried on, uninterested in correcting anyone or defending their choice. They didn't need to prove their stability. The evidence was in their laughter, their shared glances, the way they still looked at each other after all these years. To them, the secret to lasting love wasn't about ceremony or security. It was about compatibility, honesty, and humor. They had built a partnership that was practical yet romantic, modern yet timeless. In many ways, their refusal to marry became their most powerful statement, a quiet act of defiance in an industry obsessed with optics. Goldie once summed it up perfectly: "We've both been married. When it doesn't work out, it ends up being a big business. Somebody has to own something. It's always ugly." Instead, she and Kurt chose simplicity, to love without legal binds, to stay without the pressure of permanence, and to define their relationship on their own terms. This was the secret heart of their romance, a love story that didn't follow the Hollywood script. No staged proposals, no diamond rings on magazine covers, no fairytale endings. Just two people who proved that the truest promise isn't written on paper. It's lived, day by day, choice by choice. Their love became a quiet revolution, a reminder that sometimes, the most enduring relationships are the ones that don't need to be declared to the world, only felt by the two people who live them. When people talk about Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, they often focus on the romance, the glances, the laughter, the decades of togetherness without marriage. But the deeper truth, the part that made their love unshakable, was the life they built beyond themselves. Their story was never just about two people in love, it was about family. A beautifully blended, unconventional family that became their greatest accomplishment. Before Kurt, Goldie was already a devoted mother. From her marriage to musician Bill Hudson, she had two children, Oliver and Kate. Both were still young when Goldie met Kurt on the set of Swing Shift, and she was fiercely protective of them. For her, any romantic relationship would have to align with her life as a mother. Fame was secondary. What mattered most was the home she'd built for her kids. Kurt understood that immediately. He was a father himself. He shared a son, Boston, with his ex-wife, actress Susan Hubley. So when he entered Goldie's world, he didn't just fall in love with her. He fell in love with her children too. From the very beginning, he treated Oliver and Kate not as extensions of Goldie, but as individuals, with their own feelings, dreams, and boundaries. Goldie would later recall the moment that truly made her fall for him. "When I watched my kids, how he was with them, he was amazing," she said in Vogue. "He's just a good person, kind and fun, and I loved how they responded to him." For a woman who had experienced the fragility of fame and the volatility of love, seeing that genuine connection meant everything. Kurt wasn't trying to play a role, he was simply being himself, a caring, present, grounded man who understood what family meant. Their home soon became a haven, warm, noisy, and full of life. There were family dinners, outdoor adventures, holidays that felt like celebrations of togetherness rather than performance. Kurt was there for school events, birthday parties, and those quiet, ordinary days that never make the headlines but mean the most. Then, in 1986, their family grew again. On July 10th, they welcomed their son Wyatt Russell, the final thread that tied their lives together. Wyatt would go on to follow in his parents' footsteps, becoming an actor, but at the time, he was simply a symbol of their love, proof that their unconventional partnership had created something real and lasting. From the outside, they looked like the perfect Hollywood family, but inside, they were just people learning, adjusting, and growing together. Goldie's children bonded deeply with Kurt. To this day, both Oliver and Kate refer to him as their father. Kate has often spoken publicly about his influence, describing him as a dependable, loving man who showed me what a real partner looks like. In countless interviews, she has emphasized that her sense of stability and love came not from traditional marriage, but from the home Kurt and Goldie created together. Their professional lives intertwined as naturally as their personal ones. In 1987, they co-starred in Overboard, a romantic comedy that became both a box office hit and a reflection of their real-life chemistry. In the film, Goldie plays a spoiled heiress who loses her memory, and Kurt's character, a working-class father, pretends she's his wife. It's a story about transformation, second chances, and love that transcends circumstance. Watching it now feels like a glimpse into their reality. Playful, flawed, but deeply affectionate. Behind the cameras, their real love story continued to thrive. They found joy in balance, alternating between work and family, Hollywood sets and quiet home life. There was no separation between their worlds. Their children grew up seeing two parents who genuinely liked each other, who laughed often, argued honestly, and stayed connected without needing perfection. That became the secret strength of their relationship. It was lived in the small, everyday moments. In the laughter echoing through their kitchen, the ski trips to Aspen, the family movie nights. They had created something that many celebrity couples couldn't: normalcy. Goldie once said that her greatest pride wasn't her awards or her career longevity, but her family. "My family is my heart," she said. And in that family, Kurt wasn't just a partner. He was the steady, grounding force that turned love into legacy. Their romance, when stripped of all its Hollywood glamour, is really a story about choosing love every day, not just between two people, but within a family. Through shared children, laughter, films, and the messiness of real life, they built something far richer than a perfect marriage. They built a home. The beauty of Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell's relationship is not in its spectacle, but in its steadiness. In an industry built on illusions, their love has remained remarkably grounded. No screaming headlines, no scandalous separations, no public meltdowns. Just quiet endurance. A relationship that didn't demand attention because it was too busy lasting. While Hollywood marriages came and went, often with lavish beginnings and bitter endings, Goldie and Kurt stayed true to something far simpler. They never followed the pattern, and perhaps that's exactly why they survived. As Goldie once put it in style, a lasting relationship isn't about marriage, it's about compatibility and communication. And you both have to want it. They had both lived long enough in the spotlight to understand that fame can magnify everything: love, jealousy, distance. But rather than feeding into that pressure, they chose to focus inward. There was no need for a fairytale narrative or a perfect image. Instead, their strength came from small, everyday moments: laughter over breakfast, ski trips with the kids, quiet nights at home when the cameras were gone. Goldie has often spoken about the practical side of love, that it requires effort, space, and humor. "You have to want to be together," she told in style. "And you have to stay playful. You can't lose the laughter. You have to keep that spark alive." For her, the secret wasn't just romance, it was friendship. She and Kurt were partners, companions, and teammates. They had their own rhythm, a shared sense of humor, and a deep respect for each other's independence. That independence was essential. Both had strong careers, their own creative identities, and their own way of moving through the world. They supported each other without losing themselves, something many Hollywood couples struggled with. Goldie continued to produce and act, while Kurt pursued roles that showcased his range, from action hero to character actor. Neither tried to outshine the other. They celebrated each other's successes without competition. Their relationship wasn't immune to challenges, of course. Life threw the usual mix of career demands, family responsibilities, and the public gaze their way. But through it all, they held on to a simple truth: they didn't need to prove their love. They didn't need to post declarations or host grand gestures. Their commitment was visible in the constancy of their choices, in staying when it would have been easier to walk away, in listening, in laughing, in forgiving. One of the most endearing public moments that captured their dynamic came at the 1989 Academy Awards. They walked on stage together to present an award, glowing with that easy chemistry the world had come to adore. As the crowd watched, Kurt looked at Goldie and teased, "There's only one thing we're not: married." Without missing a beat, she smiled and asked, "Is that a proposal?" The audience erupted in laughter. It was pure Goldie and Kurt, playful, unscripted, and real. That brief exchange said everything about their relationship. They could have turned that moment into a Hollywood spectacle, an engagement, a headline, a viral story before the internet even existed. But they didn't. Because they didn't need to. That teasing moment wasn't a setup for a wedding, it was a symbol of something far stronger. Two people who understood each other completely, comfortable enough to joke about what the world couldn't stop asking. They could have followed the script. The industry expected them to. A wedding would have been easy, glamorous, celebrated, even profitable. But instead, they chose authenticity over performance. They wrote their own story, quietly, page by page, without needing the applause. Their endurance became its own statement, not loud, but lasting. Goldie often says that kindness is the real glue of their relationship. "You have to be kind," she told in style. "If you're not kind, forget it. You've got to want to be there. You've got to wake up and say, 'I still choose you.'" That's the hidden work of love, the part no one sees. It's not the red carpets or the magazine covers. It's the silent decision made again and again, even when life gets messy. For Goldie and Kurt, that's the real secret, the power of quiet consistency, of two people who never stopped choosing each other. Their story is proof that love doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be real. And sometimes, the greatest romances are not the ones written in scripts, but the ones lived, imperfectly and beautifully, behind the scenes. In the world of Hollywood, where love stories burn bright and fast, and where forever often means a few months, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell have created something quietly extraordinary. Their relationship has never been about spectacle, scandal, or the grand gestures that dominate headlines. It's been about something far rarer: constancy. 4 decades together, countless changes, and still, that same steady laughter that began with one clumsy pickup line in 1983. Their love story has become more than just a personal triumph. It's a legacy. A living example that in an industry built on scripts and illusions, the truest love stories are the unscripted ones. Where others searched for the perfect wedding, they built a perfect partnership. While others chased titles, husband, wife, power couple, they focused on something deeper, being each other's person. In 2023, Goldie Hawn once again reminded the world why she and Kurt never married. Her words were simple but profound: "I like the idea that I can wake up in the morning and make decisions every day if I want to be here." That sentence captures the heart of their philosophy. Love, for her, isn't a contract, it's a choice. A conscious, daily act of commitment that means far more than a legal vow. That's the secret this story reveals: not a hidden affair, not a scandalous revelation, but something much more human, the beauty of freedom and trust. Goldie and Kurt's secret romance was never hidden. It was just misunderstood. They didn't need a wedding ring to symbolize loyalty, or a certificate to prove devotion. Their bond was built on something quieter and stronger: the courage to choose each other again and again without any obligation to. Their journey teaches us that love is not about ownership, but about partnership. That real commitment comes from respect, laughter, and the freedom to remain yourself within the relationship. They've shown that independence and intimacy can coexist, that it's possible to love someone deeply without losing who you are. For decades, people have asked how they made it work. The truth lies in their balance. They never tried to merge into one. They stayed two whole individuals who complemented each other's lives. Goldie once said that she and Kurt are together because we want to be, not because we have to be, and that might just be the quiet key to their success. Their love story, at its core, defied Hollywood's expectations. No divorces, no public meltdowns, no staged perfection. Just an honest, evolving connection between two people who understood that the heart doesn't need permission to stay. In the end, their secret romance is not a mystery, it's a message. A reminder that love doesn't need to follow the world's script to be real. So when we look back at Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, their laughter, their resilience, their ability to grow old together without losing the spark, what we see is not a conventional love story, but a liberated one. They didn't tie themselves to promises they couldn't keep. Instead, they lived the promise every single day. Maybe that's the lesson we can take from them. Love isn't proven by ceremonies or anniversaries. It's proven by presence, by patience, by showing up. It's in the choice to stay when things get hard, to forgive, to laugh, to grow side by side without needing anyone else's validation. And perhaps that's what Goldie Hawn's secret romance finally exposed really means. The secret isn't hidden passion or forbidden love. It's the radical simplicity of choosing someone not because you must, but because you still want to. In a city of fleeting romances and glittering illusions, their love endures like a quiet truth. The best love stories aren't written for the screen, they're lived, day by day, in the spaces between the spotlight. And that is the heart of Goldie Hawn's secret romance finally exposed. Not a scandal, not a mystery, but a living example that love can last, even without a ring or a contract. If this story made you think differently about what commitment really means, then take a moment right now to hit that like button, It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story. I'd love to hear from you, too. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Does marriage make love stronger, or is true commitment something deeper, something you prove every single day without needing a ceremony? And if you enjoyed diving into this one, stay tuned. Next week, we'll explore another Hollywood love that broke all the rules, a story filled with passion, rebellion, and choices that changed everything. Until then, remember this: love doesn't have to follow the script to be extraordinary. Sometimes, the most beautiful romances are the ones written quietly, in laughter, in loyalty, and in the courage to choose each other again and again.